Well, it sounds like you worked most of the weekend. Sounds like you worked most. Okay, welcome everyone. I'll call the regular council meeting of Tuesday, September 16th, 2025 to order at 7:01 p.m. We'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional territories of the Indigenous peoples of the Treaty 7 territory and the Otay-Pimiciwaa Métis Government, District 4. We respect the histories, languages, and cultures of First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and all First Peoples of Canada whose presence continues to enrich our community. Welcome, Clark. Thanks for coming. Okay, item 2.1. We do have an amendment on an addition of 6.4. Who would like to make the motion?
Through the chair.
Councillor Lambert.
I'll make the motion that that we add item 6.4 being the addition of a special ballot for the 2025 municipal election as item 6.4 to the agenda.
Okay, all in favor? That's motion carried. Item 3.1, are there any edits to the minutes? There's no edits. Who would like to make a motion?
Through the chair,
Councillor Bang.
I'll make the motion that the minutes be accepted as prepared.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
That's motion carried. Okay, we have a delegation tonight, item 4.1, RCMP quarterly report with Sergeant Ian Patey. And I think Corey's coming up too. So just whenever you're ready.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here once again. We must be doing something right. We keep getting invited back, so. So yeah, Q1 reports were sent out. I'm not sure if I need to speak more into this or not.
Yes, please.
Okay. The letter to mayor and council, it's just an introduction to the new commanding officer with K Division. Interesting side note, we actually have the pleasure of having his son work at our office. It's going to be short-lived, unfortunately, because he's found his way to get onto our emergency response team right away. So I actually saw the document today that he'll be going to the ERT team here as soon as possible. So if you do have the opportunity before he transfers to have a chat with him, he's a nice young gentleman, and he came over from CPS to us. So with regards to the provincial policing report, I had the opportunity to look at the files today for Q1. So just as a reminder, Q1 goes from April to June of 2025. In Q1, there was 205 calls for service. With regards to rural crime and crime reduction, as always, we continue with Project Arrow. So in the community or in the rural areas, we have been monitoring 7 subjects. Checks on those subjects showed them to be mostly compliant. During this period, some subjects have been added and removed. I checked today, and currently there are 0 people for this project in Crossfield.
Thank you.
Yes. So for the rural area overall, 25 checks were conducted, with the exception of 2. Everyone was compliant, and these subjects were breached on their conditions. In addition, the Airdrie Rural Crime Reduction Unit has worked on 9 files in the rural area, which resulted in numerous arrest charges, drug seizures, and stolen property recovery. They also work in partnership with the Integrated Rural Crime Unit for a 2-day shoplifting blitz at Cross Iron Mills Mall. I know that doesn't really affect you guys, but there's also, we started another one today. So for the next 3 days, there will be another shoplifting blitz there. So with regards to community engagement, I know Corey's been very busy staying in touch with the community. I know it's been a little slower over the summer, but I know in the spring during April, May, and June, he was kept quite busy coming into this new role. Is there anything you want to add with regards to community engagement?
No, kind of the best part about me is that even when I'm not at work, I'm still here. So I kind of, get to go to the events with my own family and kids and partake. And I think having that little bit of homegrown knowledge kind of goes a long way with some things for sure. So, yeah, no, it's been a lot of fun getting into the position and kind of get running with it now. And files permitting, I'm hoping to be able to do a lot more, be able to do a lot more in the different businesses.
With regards to road safety, during this quarter, there had been at least 147 traffic enforcement activities, which included tickets and warnings. In review of the files today, approximately 40 of those were in the Crossfield area. Also, the rural detachment investigated 24 impaired driving related investigations, which 11 of those resulted in impaired sanctions or suspension. And the traffic unit also operates in this area, and they conducted 6 impaired driving related investigations, with 5 of those resulting in impaired sanctions. So just to nail down a bit further on that, I looked at it specifically for Crossfield. There was 4 IRS suspensions issued in Crossfield during that reporting period. 3 were issued by the rural members and 1 was issued by the traffic unit. And then with regards to kind of manpower, of the 5 established positions, 5 officers are currently working with no one on special leave. There's no hard vacancies at this time. Of the 2 established positions, 1 resource is currently working with no one on special leave. That's detached with support. There is 1 hard vacancy. I'm pleased to report that since I've been in the position for almost a year, we've never looked better with regards to manpower, knock on wood. We're pretty much at full capacity with, I have 4 watches with 4 members on each watch. And then I have also Corey in the enhanced position here, and I have another member in the enhanced position in Rocky View. So quite happy with that. With regards to the specific files, I know this is all great and pretty, but I like to have a look at the files to kind of give you meat and potatoes, exactly what's been happening in Q1. So looked at them by category. So there was report of 3 assaults, 2 were domestic violence related, and 1 was involving 2 youths. There was an assault with a weapon where charges have been laid. There was 6 B&Es of businesses. Up to this point, no charges have been laid. I did have a look through those files. 3 of the files had CCTV footage. Unfortunately, subjects that were captured were masked and have not been identified, and no fingerprints or other evidence left at the scene. In April, there was a JFO check stop with Airdrie Rural and provincial traffic. There was 3 members involved, 80 vehicles were checked during that check stop. No suspensions were issued. During that reporting period, there was 3 criminal harassments, a bullying incident, a neighbor dispute, and then incident over Facebook regarding messages sent through a kind of a domestic violence situation. And on April the 10th, there was MHA call from a subject that was previously on Project Arrow that we were monitoring in Crossfield. Unfortunately, this escalated, and subject ended up being charged with resist arrest, assault PO, and attempt to disarm a police officer. With regards to frauds, there was 7 frauds reported. They a lot of them were over the internet. Email hack to order 3D parts, a travel scan where someone had sent some money for plane tickets, cryptocurrency scam. This one's still under investigation. It's $15,000 the victim had lost. And there was a Pure Later scam where send money through Bitcoin and some Apple gift cards. So that's still an investigation, and currently the victim is out at least $2,500. There's also a TELUS employee scam. I don't know if you guys get them regularly. I get them almost every day where TELUS is calling me, offering me a new phone. So a lot of times they try to get personal identification information and banking information. Luckily, the person was savvy to what was going on and didn't provide any. So they were just reporting for info. Another scam that we've seen a couple times is Stars Lottery. You've won a vehicle and all you have to do is send us some money to get it towed to your location. So just be aware of that. And then it came in as a fraud from a taxi service here in Crossfield. It was determined that it was more of a situation of extending a client credit by not having them pay up front when the services were rendered. We had 3 harassing communications. All this was through social media, Facebook, threats online, through crypto scams, people trying to get more money. Identity theft, we had 2 reports of those files where a victim provided a driver's license and SIN number to a website that they thought was the government of Canada. And then a person from India notified by the consulate that someone in India was using their identification. 9 mental health calls, 5 mischief, 5 mischief to vehicles, 2 flight from police. These were break and enter related vehicles that we had one we had responded to a call for service, another one it was a proactive patrol. No pursuit was initiated in either of those situations. There was a drug file possession. Subject was found with 1 gram of meth, and he was also given a driving suspension and numerous violation tickets. Couple files for sextortion where messages were sent, text messages were sent, where a youth was pretending to be a police officer and had the victim send some messages. And another one where another youth had sent some sensitive pictures through social media. And then the subjects were now asking for money, or they'd be posting the picture online. 20 suspicious calls or suspicion person calls. We had a theft of a car recovered by CPS. That theft occurred from the driveway. Theft of an RV was found at another storage unit, stolen from 1 storage unit, found at another one. And this is still under investigation. The RV surprisingly was revid, so it's a little more sophisticated. And then a couple more vehicle stolen, shoplifting, theft. Apparently there was 3 theft from motor vehicles where people were rummaging through and stealing whatever they could. 9 well-being checks and uttering threats ×4 where there was 1 charge laid. That's about all. Anything else to add? Any questions on any of that?
Any questions?
Through the chair.
Counselor Lambert.
I don't have a question on any of that. I have a question about e-scooters and e-bikes.
Okay.
I live right on Harrison, and those little buggers are going well over 30. They don't stop for stop signs. I mean, they're not a licensed vehicle, so can you guys do anything about that? And I mean, most of these kids aren't even wearing helmets.
Yeah.
At the rate they're going, if they go down,
Yeah, it's becoming a more common problem across a lot of different communities. Crossfield's definitely not the only one impacted by this by any means. Technically, once you take a electronic bike or an electronic scooter onto a roadway, it is a vehicle. The second it touches a roadway, you need registration and insurance, bare minimum helmet. So there is some enforcement action possible. However, is that the appropriate action with Nate? Education's usually your better bet. Change of behavior is what you really want to see. That is going on, but there are different things. But yeah, the second you bring that onto a roadway, it is underneath the traffic.
Yeah.
And the Alberta regular.
So just on that note too, I'm just curious, usually our municipal enforcement officer does a bike safety during the year. And I'm curious, maybe some of the scooter stuff could be incorporated into that.
Yeah, and I'm
Okay,
glad
so
you brought
not-
it up
okay.
because it's definitely something that Corey could speak with bylaw about as well, the officer, and it's something that they could look at targeting and enforcing.
I mean, that probably not gonna last much longer, and it has settled down since school's gone back in. But yeah, I really worry that somebody's gonna get really badly hurt at the
Yeah.
rate there. Cause I mean, Harrison's a nice straight go, right? And yeah, I know they're going well over 30. And if they go down on that without a helmet or any other, like I would never ride my motorcycle in Medicine Hat, even without my leathers. I wouldn't.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's education, but I mean, I had a neighbor pull up the other day and he was on a e-scooter and he was telling me it could go up to 80 kilometers an hour.
I don't know if I can continue with this meeting because I'm just picturing in your leathers.
Next meeting.
All right, any more questions?
Through the chair,
Counselor Knight?
just a question in regards to the suspicious police personal vehicle property increase, it's up 72%. Do we think that's due to maybe a communication program, people contacting the non-emergency line, or is there similar stats in other regions? I'm just curious, it's just a significant increase. If that's what we're seeing in trends in other areas, or if there's a reason why we think that's increased quite so much?
No, I'm quite happy actually that we're getting calls for service for stuff like that. And I see it consistent over the other rural communities as well. One of the things I appreciate more in the rural areas, people have knowledge of what's out of place and what's not out of place, whereas in the city, people don't really pay a lot of attention to that. So I think it's just people being concerned and calling in. I know when you call in suspicious people and stuff like that, we're quick to respond and figure out if it's something that's actually criminal or not in nature, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's good that they're calling that stuff in and it allows us to respond.
Mayor, I wonder if there's an opportunity for administration to post something like a bit of
Education?
an educational
Yeah.
system of, if you're seeing things, these are kind of the things that are kind of important, kind of speaking to it. I think there's a large concern out there, but I don't think everyone knows how they get who to contact, how to go there. I think that wouldn't hurt for us to put something out there in our social media. Just, you see something out of place on these comments, these are good things I think that are happening. I just,
Agreed.
And a lot of people, they have to look up the RCMP line, but I think I sent a media release out months ago, but 310 RCMP. So if you dial that number anywhere in Alberta, it'll get you in contact with non-emergency police. So it's pretty easy to remember, the 310 RCMP.
Great.
Yep.
I'm just wondering, so you guys can't be, we could have 15 RCMP officers here and some of the stuff would still happen because you can't be on every corner at every storefront and every home and all of that. I just wonder if there's some conversations or education that we can have with business owners, with our residents, with, our community as a whole. What can we do to start that conversation? And what are the things that we can do to prevent some of these things from happening? And I know that sometimes there's really nothing we can do, especially when it's a organized crime. They come in, they have the tools, they hit the place and they're in and out within a matter of minutes.
There's definitely, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
there's definitely stuff we could do, and I know when Corey came on in this position, we had discussed the business crime watch. I know in the past in different communities it's been successful. So it's one of the things that I think he was going to look at doing here in the fall. Start contacting businesses and kind of educating them in terms of things that they can be doing. Obviously, when I started this job, I thought if we had a picture of a bad guy, we'd solve every crime, and that's definitely not the case. I mean, even with them, even when they're not wearing masks, we get the picture. If it's a good quality picture, we fan it out to pretty much all the detachments in Alberta and focus a lot on Calgary police because a lot of people are coming up here committing crimes. But it's definitely something that can be done there. I think that there is definitely an educational piece there, and I could look at stuff that I could send out to you guys with regards to putting stuff on the website in terms of residents, in terms of just educational things that you can do, better lighting,
Yeah.
camera system, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that'd be appreciated if you can work maybe with Director Nash and his crew a little bit too.
Yep.
I think that'd be great. Perfect. Anything else? All right, well, thank you for your great report and helping our community. Appreciate that. Who would like to make a motion?
To the chair,
Deputy Mayor,
I move that council accept the RCMP Q1 update for information.
all in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. Thank you.
Everyone have a good night.
Yeah, me too. We have item 5.1, application for Vista Crossing Phase 5. We have Director Steve Altina with his presentation.
All right, ready to go. Good evening, council. Steve Altina, Director of Infrastructure and Community Growth, here to present this item tonight. Purpose of the report is for the subdivision authority. So just as a reminder to council, I guess, on that, is that you now have the subdivision authority hat on for this item. Is to assess the proposed subdivision of 6.48 hectares plus or minus 16.017 acres thereabouts of Southwest 3528-1 west of the 5th to create Vista Crossing Phase 5, consisting of 49 R1B lots, that's residential single detached medium parcel districts, and 50 R1C lots, residential single detached small parcel district, and 3 MUN lots, municipal and institutional district parcels. Just to recap for council, a little bit on the site context. So the subdivision area is located in the north central area of Vista Crossing. The Vista Crossing ASP was approved for the subject lands in 2015 and amended in 2024. The redesignation of the subject lands to R1B and R1C and MUN was approved by council on May 6, 2025 to support the proposed subdivision. And just as a reminder, that is the map from the redesignation showing the development area there bounded in the pink bounding box. A portion of the proposed development is located within the Rocky View and Crossfield Intermunicipal Development Plan policy area and is subject to the policies of that statutory plan. Rocky View County was circulated on the application along with several agencies, including Alberta Transportation and Economic Corridors, Rocky View Schools, ATCO, Fortis, TELUS, as well as internal town departments. Circulation comments received by the town are presented in your package there. Landowners were also circulated from July 15th, 2024 to August 16th, 2024. No responses received during the circulation period. The town staff did conduct a policy analysis of the proposed subdivision. The application does align with the policies of the Rocky View and Crossfield Intermunicipal Development Plan, the Town Municipal Development Plan, the Vista Crossing Area Structure Plan, and the Town Land Use Bylaw. Policy 6.2G of the Vista Crossing Area Structure Plan states that approval of land use redesignation will confirm that sanitary capacity available for redesignation area. And if council will recall, we deferred that capacity confirmation to the subdivision phase. The town has recently received a letter of authorization from Alberta Environment and Protected Areas that allows for an additional limited release of treated effluent to Nose Creek in the 2027 years. to support development in the short term while the town works to improve wastewater disposal capacity. And council will hear more about that later tonight. So administration felt that that barrier was down and that the subdivision could proceed. All in all, administration recommends that the proposed development aligns with the intent and policies of the statutory plans and the land use bylaw. And that ultimately we recommend that the Vista Crossing Phase 5 subdivision application be approved with the conditions noted in attachment A of your package. I'm available for any questions, should you have them.
All right, questions for Director Altina?
Through the chair.
Counselor Knight?
I got a handful here, so sorry about this, but is it normal to have this many conditions in an application that we're looking to kind of pass forward, or is there I guess that's my first question. Is it normal to see this many conditions added into this request for this application?
Through the chair, I believe so, Councilor Knight. We have essentially 16 conditions. The last two, 17 or 18, are essentially advisory conditions. But we have 16 conditions for the subdivision. I've certainly seen subdivisions with a lot more conditions tied to them. This is fairly straightforward, kind of rollover into Phase 5. Just moving ahead with an already planned phase subdivision.
Is there any risk for council approving the subdivision with these conditions? Like there's a mechanism or something in the conditions to make sure everything is reached and continued on at this part? But just help me understand and the residents understanding, you know, we approve this, these conditions are met, what applications or what instruments are in place that these things all get worked their way through?
Right. So through the chair to Councilor Knight. So the applicant has to satisfy each of these conditions to administration to achieve endorsement of the subdivision. And what's prepared after that is a subdivision authority approval along with the endorsement package that is ultimately sent to land titles with everything that needs to be registered. So typically administration work through each of these conditions with the applicant who would submit their technical data or their instruments for each application, again, be reviewed by administration, including their planners and their engineers for compliance with these conditions.
Okay, next question. Thank you for that. Municipal reserve, urban reserves talked about for 19.9% in the first 5 phases. Is it typical in a town? Like I know that we're meeting their requirements, but a lot of that reserve is actually in part of stormwater holding, all the rest of that stuff. Is that a typical thing for most communities that we see, that a large number of that? I do believe they meet and they're exceeding the conditions of that. Is that normal with the way that the land kind of is encompassed in the water storage? Is that sort of similar to what you'd see in other communities in other areas?
Through the chair to Councilor Knight, I may need you to clarify a little bit of that, but I'll take a stab at it and you lead me back to the path if I'm off on what you're asking. In terms of MR, so under the Municipal Government Act, the municipality can require up to 10% MR. Right now, the Vista Crossing development is over dedicated, so a lot of their beginning subdivisions essentially included MR space, park space, MR space around the ponds. The ponds themselves, their infrastructure, they don't count towards that park space. It's the pathways and green space around that. It's Amory Park. It's the new Ellen Park that's being developed. So right now they're over dedicated on MR space. But I think as we go through the development, you'll see some of the later developments towards the north. They'll have a little bit less park space. So it will balance out in the end. But right now they're over dedicated. So
No,
satisfied with where we're at with Phase 5.
and I think that was my confusion. I think my confusion was the stormwater areas was encompassing of that area. So that's a good answer. This is just a minor one, but this is Alberta Transport Section 18 is not met. What is Section 18? I'm just more curious than anything.
Through the chair to Councilor Knight, I should be more prepared for this question because I know it always throws people. Essentially, I believe if it's met, then Alberta Transportation gets more involved with the development. I'd have to look it up again. It's under the highway development regulations, I believe. When it's not met, then that means Alberta Transportation has no concerns with the application. It's a bit of like a negative that means a positive for an applicant.
It wasn't a big thing.
You're getting a head nod from Clark back
Yeah.
there, so.
No, thanks, Steve. Those answered a large chunk of my.
I could certainly follow up, Councilor Knight, with a
Not a deal
better
breaker.
answer after.
I just rather than seven, that's section 18 within metal. Section 8. Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions?
Through the chair,
Counselor Gustafson.
Steve, thanks for getting this prepared. It's not clarification for me, it's just more for some of the residents that were asking me about proposed lot widths and depths. So for non-rectangular lots, they still hold the same amount of square footage, a minimum square footage for the town requirements in those lots to be, whether it's one or R1B or R1C.
Thanks. Through the chair to Councilor Gustafson, perhaps you're referring to just the discrepancy in our land use bylaw around irregular lots.
Correct.
Yeah, and so we discussed this with council a little bit at redesignation phase 2. Unfortunately, our land use bylaw includes 2 definitions for how we measure irregular lots. Council and administration have typically supported figure 3 in the land use bylaw, but there is a discrepancy for that measurement between figure 3 and section 1.6.2. But the town has previously followed figure 3. So based on our assessment, the lots do all comply with figure 3 of the land use bylaw. It is an inconsistency, unfortunately, in our land use bylaw, and something that we'll iron out certainly as we bring forward amendments.
Yeah, can you explain that a little bit more on the discrepancy and how it is?
I feel like I would need a bit of a visual aid to do so. Again, figure 3 is a graphic itself, and then there's wording in section 1.6.2. So I had to get back to you on that one.
Okay, that's fine. And the only other one is just from MPE's wording about the freeboard on the west edge of the pond 3. Was there some conditions around the gap being created?
Yeah, and through the chair to Councillor Gustafson. So these comments are all from our circulation period. And so these have all been addressed
Okay.
between our engineer and the applicant's engineer.
Okay.
Yeah, and so we're all satisfied on the technical side from an administration standpoint. And we would expect that we'd very shortly be able to enter into that development agreement with the applicant.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, so I'm going to start with maybe just a question on here, like from our own municipal departments. We see no comments received. And I look at that and it looks like our departments aren't really reading through some of these things. I'm just wondering if the departments all could not say no comments, but can they say that we don't have any concerns or something with this and give feedback?
Yeah, to the chair, certainly that's something we can work on, I think internally as town administration, is how these are presented. Ultimately, we do rely on the town's engineer to provide a lot of this technical feedback. I think there's a bit of a danger in saying no concerns if you haven't reviewed it fully, and maybe it's maybe putting yourself out there when you haven't actually done the due diligence to review it fully. We do work obviously with the fire department very closely and operations wastewater department very closely. So I don't have any concerns from that standpoint without the comments being received, but perhaps it's a different way to present that to
Yeah, and
council
I just
internal work,
wonder,
so.
Director Altina, if maybe some of these things don't pertain to some departments and maybe they don't go on the list for some particular developments or whatever that looks like. I don't know. Maybe you guys can come up with a solution, but it doesn't look good.
Yeah, and I think just to reassure yourself there, Mayor, is that it is reviewed at a very technical detail level with our engineer, and they do look for things, from the water, wastewater side of things, and certainly from the fire department side of things in terms of having that fire suppression available within the community. So it's not that some of these items, aren't addressed, but we didn't receive particular comments from those departments at that time. So
Really good. Thank you. On under the MDP under 4.61, it talks about like a mix of housing between single detached parcels, duplex, semi-detached, and they talk about secondary suites in there. Are there any proposed secondary suites within this development?
To the mayor, I don't believe there's any proposed right now at the subdivision stage. The town typically handles those on an ad hoc basis. And so the MDP would then help support that ad hoc development of secondary suites within the development as builders get started within the proposed subdivision, or after construction is done of the proposed subdivision in the years to come. Yeah, and so we see that there's a housing mix provided, between roughly 50% of two different lot types. So
And then I'm just curious, under 5.3.5, we talk about municipal reserve. And we talk about a lot of this consists of green space adjacent to the stormwater pond. Are the pathways considered MR space?
to the chair, yes. So the pathways in the space roughly around them, it varies. In our new municipal development plan, our minimum is 10 meters for a linear pathway, right? So the pathway
Yeah.
itself may occupy 3 meters of that space, and the other 7 meters is on either side. It's kind of that green linear corridor. So those spaces all count as MR.
Okay.
Typically.
Even with the new municipal development plan, where we wanted usable space, so the pathway, even though it's linear, is considered usable space.
Yes, absolutely. So in this case, it connects to the other pathways in Vista, right? Folks can go for a walk in the community on a continuous pathway throughout the community. So it's considered usable space. Again, the MDP, we set up some rules for what those minimum spaces should look like, but certainly linear features are a part of connecting MRs, connecting the community, and a valuable use of space. So
Perfect. Thank you. That's all I had.
thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, any discussion? Okay, if there's no discussion, who would like to make a motion?
Through the chair.
Deputy Mayor.
I move that the Vista Crossing Phase 5 subdivision application be approved with the conditions noted in attachment A.
Okay, all in favor? That's motion carried. Great report, thank you. And 6.1, Who's Crew Parent Society Letter of Support Request. Nicole with FCSS and Community Events Coordinator.
Good evening, Mayor Harris and Council. Thank you for having me this evening. I have also brought Graham Ireland up with me. He is the playground liaison for Parent Council and Who's Crew. So if there's any questions relating to the playground build, I'm going to direct them over to Graham. He'll know more about that.
So ask all the hard questions.
Yes, all the hard ones to Graham, please. So on Wednesday, September 10th, the Who's Crew Parent Society had reached out to the Family and Community Support Services Department to inquire about receiving a letter of support from Mayor Harris and from Council. It's for their grant applications for the grants from the Alberta Blue Cross Built Together program and the Rocky View County Community Recreation and Culture Funding. This is for the replacement of the playground at the Crossfield Elementary School. So the existing playground at the Crossfield Elementary School is over 20 years old and it's nearing the end of its lifespan. The Who's Crew Parent Society is the fundraising society for the Crossfield Elementary School, has taken on the task of fundraising and applying for grants to ensure a replacement playground will be available to future Crossfield Elementary students for years to come, as well as residents in Crossfield. The Built Together program grant. This grant helps Albertans build spaces for active living in their community. So whether it's a skate park, playground, outdoor gym, or sports court, Alberta Blue Cross is giving back to Albertans and helping them live their best lives. Each year, this Alberta grant awards $50,000 grants in Edmonton, Calgary, a secondary city, a rural community, and an Indigenous community. Priority for this grant is given to projects that reflect the Built Together mandate of promoting active living and wellness at a grassroots community level with emphasis on children. To ensure province-wide representation, this grant, so Alberta Blue Cross will split the grant with one to each of the following communities. So one community in Edmonton will receive $50,000, one in Calgary, one in a rural community, one in a secondary city, and one in an Indigenous community. So this is a focus on ensuring grants are equitably distributed on a regional basis over the life of the program. Just to note as well, the town of Crossfield is also applying to the Alberta Blue Cross Built Together grant for our pump track project. And this grant, the deadline is on Monday, September 22nd. So it's coming up quick here. The Rocky View County Capital Grant Funding through their Community Recreation and Culture Grant Program provides capital grant funding for nonprofit organizations that operate a community amenity providing recreational or cultural services that are open for the use and enjoyment of all county residents. This grant application deadline is October 1st. The town is also likely applying for this one as well for the skate parks. Municipalities can also apply for that one. That one's not as strict as the Alberta Blue Cross one. But we are here seeking a letter of support from town council for the Who's Crew Society for these two grants.
Great, thank you. Any questions? I don't think there's any questions. And as far as I'm concerned, you know, the Blue Cross grant is a tough one.
Yeah.
So the more applications maybe Crossfield has, we might have better chances of getting something here. So I'm in full support of sending him a letter to the grant. All right, who'd like to make a motion?
Through the chair,
Counselor Fox.
I'll make the motion that council signs the letters of support for the Who's Crew Parent Society for their playground replacement project at the Crossfield Elementary School.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Well, good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Kidding.
And 6.2 wastewater treatment master plan, treated effluent disposal options. And we'll have Director Altina back up and with Jennifer from Magna.
Sorry. Oh, actually, we should switch spots. Don't need the HD people. Are you? Yeah. Presentation.
You? So I was just gonna
That was a long read. This one is a long read.
Yes.
All right. I'll get started while the machine's warming up. Good evening again, Mayor and Council. Steve Altina, Director of Infrastructure and Community Growth. With Jennifer Massig from Magna Engineering here to present this item on the wastewater treatment master plan. The purpose of our presentation tonight is to report to Council on the findings of the wastewater treatment master plan that's been prepared by Magna. Just a quick little background before I turn it over to Jennifer to start with the presentation. But this study was initiated following the interim effluent disposal strategy by Magna, which explored two options: increasing treated effluent irrigation to town lands and a polishing treatment wetland. The interim disposal study concluded that the increased irrigation of town-owned lands, including agricultural lands and at the golf course, would offer limited development support. The study recommended a further feasibility study be undertaken to work towards improving treated effluent quality to allow for more frequent discharge to Nose Creek. So the wastewater treatment master plan draws on the findings of that interim effluent disposal strategy and dives a little deeper into further study of large-scale irrigation and that polishing treatment wetland system. So I'll turn it over to Jennifer to carry out her presentation, and then we'll both, of course, be available for questions at the end.
Great, thank
And
you.
I guess I'll wrap up actually when Jennifer's done, so. Yes.
Good, okay, great. Thank you, Director Altina. I've met some of you, but my name is Jennifer Massig. I'm the CEO of Magna Engineering Services. I usually like to start this off, give a little bit of introduction of who I am, and it kind of speaks to how I ended up sitting here. My career started at Stantec doing utilities master planning. So it was looking at helping communities do the integration of water, wastewater, and stormwater. Through life circumstances, I ended up at home with two little girls and decided to run for council in the city of Chestermere. Long time ago. I was finished in 2017, so it's really clear that we remember the dates. So I had one term there at home with my little girls and contributing to my community by stepping up. So first and foremost, thank you so much to Mayor and Council for this job. I know it is a big one, especially in a small community in Alberta. So Magna was born in the last year of that term. My daughter went off to grade 1. I had a little time on my hands. And what I realized was there was a real disconnect between how engineers and communities talk to each other. And both were trying to do the best thing, but a translator was needed between them. When I started this, I was just going to be the translator. Soon, about 2 or 3 years into getting started, so that was about 2016, I realized that there wasn't enough engineers that were willing to take on actually doing the work maybe that communities needed. So you're going to hear about us talking today, even the introduction to Director Altina and to the town of Crossfield was around the idea of there's got to be something that we can do while we're dealing with these growth pressures of a small community in Alberta. And maybe there's an engineering company out there that is willing to look outside the box a little bit. So we're going to talk a bit about that today and a little history, actually really about even some of the options, how they got there to solve some of those problems. So that's me. The next thing I'll say is I know councils love to pay for studies. So I'm going to echo what Director Altina was saying. This is the last study. Everything after this is implementation, approvals, and moving to the next stages. So it's always excited to share that. And so this big one was addressing that immediate need that was discussed. It was maybe timely to have the dream presentation just before this one to hear about what's, how we've been trying to move through supporting the growth in Crossfield and what we can do about it. So that's what this one is about. So the first one, and I don't have too many slides, so I'll talk a little bit about each one, but there's not too much to leave time for questions. But really just to recap that discussion for anyone from wastewater perspective, we have an annual discharge in the town of Crossfield. So that's one discharge for 3 weeks at the end of the season, usually in November. And that one storage cell has to last for that entire year, and that's where we're having that capacity problem. So you can see from the figure here, the blue line is the capacity, the orange line is the annual wastewater volume based on future growth. So the big thing when you're dealing with fast-growing communities is there has to be some type of phased approach. Often we say in small communities, you're putting the wings on the plane while it's in the air. And so the idea of having this multi-phased approach. So this year, a lot of the work that we had done late 2024, early 2025 was the short term. So there were things that your administration had done to just increase irrigation to lower the risk. Part of that was some offerings for a second discharge and those types of things to just release pressure. So what we're here to talk about today is that midterm one, which is more than just release pressure, but actually provide capacity to allow the town to be able to plan for growth for the next decade or so, while you're buying time to maybe talk what will be an ultimate solution. MPE had done some work for you a couple of years ago talking about what that long-term solution would be. And it was a pretty big price tag attached to it and a lot of effort. And that's really how this kind of medium-term solution came about. So jumping into the two options that you're seeing provided in the package, the first one is expanding this irrigation option. And I do always like to take this moment that I don't know if your team knows it, but the town of Crossfield is ahead of a number of communities in Alberta with what you've been doing with irrigation. And it's been really nice working in a community when you're talking about outside the box thinking to see a community that's already doing that work. So when we're looking at these feasibility options, you've already kind of taken a number of these steps. We're just talking about how to expand that. So the obvious first one is what would happen if we just blew the lid off irrigation. And that's really what this first one is talking about. So it's doing a combination. What you're going to see in the bottom right is the green is that existing pivot that we're already using for irrigation. The darker blue, the pivot A and B, that's putting additional pivots on land that's already owned by the town of Crossfield. And then the larger light blue areas would be that expanded, purchasing that new area so that we can actually expand irrigation and really maximize that. You're seeing a couple lines on this graph. So you're seeing the bottom blue one coming up under the orange is that storage capacity. Phase one, that's that just expansion of those dark blue areas. So that's what we can do by putting pivots just on the area that the town of Crossfield already owns. Moving to the green line, this is where we're starting to hit some of the limits of what we can do for capacity. So even if we were to use the capacity, we have the existing system with the pivots, we actually have some capacity to use those existing pivots, but we're not going to be meeting the capacity we need in the long term. So that's when we get to what we're calling is the optimized irrigation option that you're going to see in your package. I'll talk a little bit more about it, but that's when we get up to this blue line. So what's starting to happen here is you have more irrigation than you can do than your storage can provide. So this is when we talk about we're going to have to add more storage to the system. The reason for that is we only have so many months a year that we can irrigate. So even if it was the perfect weather for irrigating all the time, there are other risk factors we have to take into account. So even if you think it's windy out here, it's actually not that bad. So wind is actually not an issue with the crossfield, so we can lower the risk for irrigation. But on the other hand, because of where we are here, we have really wet months in the middle of summer, which counters that and increases some of that risk. So to balance the risk of using irrigation for effluent discharge, Alberta Environment recommends 7 months of storage. So once we hit a certain amount of capacity, we actually have to add a certain amount of storage. So you're seeing in the top right hand, that's that effluent storage cell, and underneath that little hatched area, that's that additional storage capacity. So irrigation is always a dance between enough pivots to be able to get the water out and enough storage to be able to balance that 7 months that's required to give you the, basically deal with any of the risk associated with using irrigation as your discharge. So jumping to the other option, it's working with the existing discharge you have, so working with Nose Creek. But in order to increase the amount that Nose Creek can take, we have to increase the quality of your effluent. So this is when we're talking about what can we do middle ground in a cost-effective way to just easily increase the quality so that Nose Creek can handle that additional amount of discharge. So this is more what I would consider your discharge option, whereas the irrigation one, you're still using that once a year discharge, but most of it's being used for irrigation, whereas this one, you're just turning on the tap. So regardless of the weather condition or what's going on, it's a more low risk from a discharge perspective. But the other side for this one is it is more the outside the box thinking. There's a little bit more of an approval process that comes along with it. You'll hear us talk about some of the there's a couple more hoops that we move through doing something like this. So you lower risk on the front end, but there's a little more upfront work to do. Whereas the irrigation, a little less on the front end, you take the risk on the back end by having some risk to when you can irrigate and how that's gonna work out. So from the image you're seeing with the capacity to growth, the first line is that dark blue line is where we're at with current storage cell capacity. So you can see it's crossing that line at about 2027 with our growth curve. The dark green line is phase 1. Now it might look like it's only a little bit above the navy blue line, but it actually goes all the way from 0 to that 500 cubic meters. So what I mean by that is as soon as you put in the first phase, you're actually treating all of it. So you now have a system that is just higher quality, period. So that allows us to immediately be able to do that twice a year discharge because all the water going to the creek. So versus having one dirty discharge and one clean discharge, both discharges have increased the quality and it's allowing the Nose Creek to be able to handle that amount of loading. And so then the phase 2, so that gets us out to about 2032. The phase 2 allows us to grow out to that 2040. And that's why you're seeing kind of 3 trains or 3 components in the first, in the dark green, and then 2 more in the light green to get us all the way out. But that phased approach, like everything else, what we like about both these 2 options, both irrigation and this option, is that ability to add as the community grows. So that's why they're being laid out the way that they are. So then the big thing is they're both good options, but when we balance risk and we balance cost effectiveness and life cycle, where does that leave us? So I think the important thing is when you look at the first 2, it looks like there's 3 options. There's actually 2. It's the irrigation and optimize are one option, but there's phases within each of them. So you can see on the left-hand side, the irrigation expansion, that's that 2032. The number drops, so you've got capital cost and life cycle cost. The reason it drops is we have accounted for the little bit of revenue that comes in from the irrigation component, just to give it a real apples to apples comparison. And so you're seeing that price compared to the 3.8 on the treatment on the polishing wetland side. And then the phase 2 for both of them is the comparison between the 10 million and the 6.2 million to get you that extra decade to a decade and a half of additional capacity. Obviously, there's pros and cons to these. So one of them, we talk about the irrigation side. There's that land component that we're looking at. There's also the opportunities, like I had mentioned before, there's a little bit less discharge to Nose Creek. So you've still got the regular untreated discharge, but you're not having the double discharge. And you've got a fairly normal regulatory oversight. So you just kind of move into it. You still have to do all the infrastructure planning to do it. The risks are mostly operational. We have some facilities in the town of Chestermere this July that were irrigation systems, and we are still trying to figure out how to get those down this year because it was near impossible to irrigate during the month of July, and we took on so much extra water in the system, and it's those types of risks that we talk about with irrigation. So we balance it with the 7-month storage, but it just has those different types of weather risks. Now, this was a year for the books. That is not the common use of them. But those are the types of things with not having a discharge. When you're working with irrigation or things like that, we are getting rid of the water, but we consider it a zero discharge type of option. Whereas with the polishing wetland, you have that discharge. So it starts to lower that long-term risk if you have different weathers, or even if you're looking at growth capacity, it kind of takes some of those ebbs and flows. And the risk part of it is there's a little bit more front end is going through the approval processes and different things like that. So from a cost perspective, you know, it really, you do see the additional cost saving in the polishing wetland side. So that is obviously is a big part of it. But when we take into account some of the land ownership, you can start to see where it's still cost beneficial, but overall, they can be a little bit close on the cost side. So I just wanted to kind of flag that because I think that'll come up as a question. So with that, on this slide, we are recommending the polishing wetland just to reduce risk over time. This is meant to be a midterm solution to a longer one. So the decision from an engineering perspective was to put something that has a little less uncertainty, allows the town to deal with that risk of growth and how that's going to go. And also we're seeing that cost benefit to the system in the long term. So with that, I just want to get a little information. I've talked about this kind of upfront risk or going through that approval process. So I thought I wanted to give a little color to that. So one of the first things that Magna had offered to do as part of our process with the town of Crossfield is we entered into a contract with Alberta Innovates and Alberta Environment actually to write a framework for doing the work that the town of Crossfield is looking to do. And it was around the idea that Crossfield's not the only one that's dealing with these types of growth pressures and how do they get their lagoons to do more. So what we did is we created a framework, the small tributary impact assessment, which allows you to be able to work within your code of practice lagoon, which is the great thing about small communities. And by doing basically treatment increase, we can release these flows back to the creek. What we're doing is we're assessing the creek using engineering outcomes. I mean, we all know that lots of guidelines and compliance things are written 20,000 years ago, it feels like sometimes, and we don't know what the intention of it is. And we're asking Alberta Environment to bring back the intention. So lagoons were meant to be low risk discharge to small tributaries, and that's what Nose Creek is. So we're suggesting that if that's what it is, by increasing the quality of your discharge, then we're meeting that low risk regime again. So that's how we're getting the support from Alberta Environment to be able to do what we're proposing for the town of Crossfield. So really quickly, a little bit about if no one's ever heard of the biofilter wetland system, there is actually a full-scale system at Clearwater at the town of Leslieville. It's Alberta approved under regulation. So it could have been approved under code of practice, but we decided to get approved under regulation just to kind of lower the risk for other communities who are looking to do this. And if we ever want to do a tour, we could also go out and do that. But it's just the idea of trying to solve problems for small communities in Alberta that needed a solution beyond the mechanical plant, but needed to be able to deal with growth issues. The traditional system is a couple different types of cells. Because this one's only a polishing one, it's only actually using what it is a horizontal flow system because we're just trying to address, for the most part, the stuff that eutrophies Nose Creek. So we're trying to get rid of the phosphoruses and the nitrogens and things like that. So it's only half of the system, which makes it a nice addition. So we call it the LA, which is the Lagoon Augmentation Biofilter Wetland System, if you're wondering kind of where that term comes from. When we were getting this work started a year and a half ago, the full-scale one had been in operation for about 2 years, and the province of Alberta actually reached out to us to ask, how can we help small communities that need to discharge to small streams during drought condition? So it came about the LA MBWS, and it was about taking that like passive treatment system and being able to shrink it down, plunk it between basically your front and back end lagoon systems and being able to increase the quality so that you can do more with it. This is, you guys know about this. You've been irrigating for years out of that. So it's really just increasing the quality to a point that it's healthy for the downstream or more healthy for the downstream environment. So we've been working hand in hand with the provincial government. So that's why this is an approval process that we wrote in partnership with the provincial government to be able to approve these types of applications swiftly, because we know that the grant funding requires that pre-approval from the provincial government. So this is, you can see the approval process is that we actually get to enter the approval process at day one. So that's this letter of authorization discussion that Director Altina and I have been having with the government. We need to get the LOA so that we can approach the government to do the Alberta Municipal Water and Wastewater Program grant funding that will actually support paying for this system next spring. And so that's the idea is usually it's done at the end of the detailed design process, and this process allows us to get that approval at the front end. So this is the last slide before my thank you, is talking around the next steps. If you choose this option that we're recommending, is tonight you're endorsing it. Second on that, or kind of concurrently, we'll be looking at, I said optional on here, engagement will be happening. It's just who does it. If we're supporting Director Altina and Mayor and Council, but for sure engaging with Nose Creek Watershed Partnership and your downstream communities that are partners of this community with the Nose Creek. We'll be working through the letter of authorization with the Alberta government to get that done so that we can move forward with the grant for it. And then quickly after that, depending on the next kind of decision of council, we'll be moving into detailed design and construction next year is the plan. Felt longer than I thought it was going to be.
Thanks, Jennifer. And so just to wrap up, just with administration's recommendation to council tonight, before we jump into questions, that administration's recommendation is that council direct administration to initiate the next steps for implementing a polishing treatment wetland system, including conduct geotechnical assessment and groundwater monitoring in fall 2025 using the remaining 2025 funds from the interim effluent disposal study. Submit the grant applications to secure the funding, engagement with neighboring municipalities and the Nose Creek Watershed Partnership. Submission of a pilot discharge application to Alberta Environment and Protected Areas and inclusion of the environmental assessments, design and construction of a polishing treatment wetland system for the 2026 budget to be considered by council, which will be later in November. And that concludes presentation. We're both available for any questions that council may have.
That's great. Just to start things off, I just want to say thank you, Jen. You did a really good job of breaking it down. So not only we can understand a little bit better, but so can our community. So, thanks for that. Questions for Jen and Steve?
Through the chair.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, again, just to reiterate, yeah, that was fantastic. There didn't leave a lot of room for questions, but I did find one for sure. Like, what is the absolute max? Because there was a slide you had back there on the receiving stream.
Mm-hmm.
What is the maximum population that we've found that it can support? Nose Creek, that is. Like, there has to be an upper limit to this? Or
Yeah.
if you're not sure, or what?
Really, it's the code of practice. Sorry, through the chair, Deputy Mayor. The code of practice actually weirdly talks about under 20,000 population, but they never use that. So what they do is they start looking at the impact to the creek at a certain point. And right now, this is where the downstream comes in. We're hitting what the town of Crossville is doing right now based on storage capacity, which is the biggest thing. And that 3-week window is we're hitting the limits of what the creek can convey. So the idea of this is a second discharge either through the year or at a second time. So one earlier in the year, late in the year, allows us to expand basically we can get more out of the storage that we already have and limit the impact to the creek. So there'll be a point actually through this process keep asking that question.
Mhm.
Because as we're monitoring it, if it's more beneficial to do more of a continuous discharge, as we're working over the next couple of years, we might find we can push the capacity of it.
Well, that was kind of what I was wondering, like, is eventually continuous would be, seems like it would be ideal.
We'll never be able to get full continuous just because of the limitations of the
Right.
creek, but the expectation is once we've treated water to a point where it's actually better for the creek, what we're looking at is one untreated discharge. How does that compare to how we're discharging? And so we're increasing the quality to show that 2 treated discharges are better than 1.
Mhm.
So then that's the code of practice has always said it's lower risk if you do 1 discharge. So they've kind of lived under that.
Mm.
We're challenging the intention of that. You did it for this reason. How about you allow us to do this? And for this
Right.
situation where small communities are like, we can't spend $100 million on a plant. And maybe we don't want to be at the whim of Calgary quite yet. So we need to have something in between.
Yeah, so that's, yeah, it's just that, that stepping stone, to so to speak.
Exactly. Keep asking the question.
Okay, perfect. Appreciate it.
Through the chair.
Counselor Knight.
Thanks for this. I think we're gonna be inevitably having to head towards the polishing treatment part, but I guess on the base irrigation part. I look at that proposal and I say, oh, we gotta buy some land for $3.6 million. It's next to land, it's next to town. I don't mind owning land next to town, but we don't have the money in the bank account to buy the land. We've got 225 acres across the street at the golf course, and I know that MP came up with some projections, some numbers. I think the town could easily do an irrigation program with the golf course, way less than like not even close to $4 million. It wouldn't even be comparable. I'm just wondering why that wasn't more investigated, or what the concerns were, why the apples and apples that we're comparing is the base irrigation with purchasing a half a section of land versus polishing thing, which I think we'll have to get to that, but I'm a little, was there any particular crying reason that we didn't look at the golf course more for the irrigation side of this?
To the chair, to Councilor Knight, I'll maybe start with this question, and Jennifer can jump in if we need any further clarification. So we did look at the golf course irrigation through the interim effluent disposal study for that first study we did this year. I think we determined that between that and some additional irrigation on our own town-owned lands, we could move about 93,000 cubic meters of additional effluent. We're looking to try and establish, moving 350 to 400,000 more cubic meters of additional effluent to try and get us to like a 2040 timeframe for growth, so we can have those big regional conversations. So the golf course, I think offers possibly in the future an opportunity for some infill irrigation, perhaps at the golf course, and we certainly had discussions with the golf course on that. But the intent here from administration was to take a big swing at this to establish, hundreds of thousands of cubic meters of additional capacity to sustain and support growth over a number of years up toward the 2040 timeframe. With just the golf course, it would only be a couple hundred homes that we'd be able to support further than that. We need to expand that effluent irrigation storage on the golf course itself. That pond is currently unlined. It does not meet Alberta environment regulations, so there need to be a lot of work done just on that pond. That pond's quite small. It's only about 7,000 cubic meters, so we need to build another facility to the south somewhere else. So that facility ended up being quite expensive. You need to line these facilities, the HDP liner, and I believe that was several million. That was a fair amount of money in the millions as well to do that. So just in the diminishing returns and support for development and the cost of it, we had recommended to council with that interim effluent disposal study that may not be our most cost-effective way to address this. Certainly, I think, and we've been in the conversations with the golf course, that there may be opportunities out there to partner with the golf course to add some more pivot heads on the driving range, and there's more room in the front 9 away from the creek. We also need to stay a little bit away from the creek. We have to be 30 meters, I believe, from the creek from a regulatory perspective. So I think there's maybe some opportunities from infill irrigation, but it just doesn't offer the volume that I think we need to continue to grow the town confidently.
But base irrigation one's only talking about 127,000 on 2 phases. So we're talking 127,000 versus 93,000 that you just said. And we never really took this project to the golf course and said, in an a la carte idea, tell me everything that, because the golf course is going to be able to meet Alberta environment requirements. We can put all those mandates in, but the cost at the golf course to get this project delivered at and when a town gets it delivered at is night and day. It won't even be comparable with MP's injured. And that's like, however that we put the requirements in, get Alberta environment, I'm just, I understand the 400,000 part. I don't understand the delta difference of us buying $3.6 million worth of land versus investing in the golf course that's right next door that is a $30,000 delta difference, Steve. That's the only difference that I see. Like, if we're talking about a significant more amount of volume, unless I'm reading this wrong, but base irrigation expansion one says 127,000 for $5 million. Correct?
Right, through the chair to Councillor Knight, we're not recommending the base irrigation option. I also think $127,000 for $5.45 million is also not a cost-effective option. You can see it below, it's $3,147 per person. And you can see the comparison between the optimized irrigation expansion, which offers a lot more discharge, and then the polishing treatment wetlands. So certainly our recommendation is not the base irrigation expansion either. And as you've heard from Jennifer through her presentation, there's also risks with that irrigation. The golf course did not take much from us this year. Golf course took about 23,000 cubic meters from us last year. This year, they've only taken 10,000 cubic meters from us because it rained so much in July. So we've had a whole 50% cutoff of irrigation from the golf course specifically. So we see this year even with just some of that risk with irrigation. So while I think there's probably still some merit in like the large scale optimized irrigation approach, it is a very large initial capital cost towards that, but that's on the scale that it pushes down the cost per person to more competitive. But we've come to council here recommending the polishing treatment wetland system as the most cost effective means to achieve this for the town.
And I understand that. I understand that's the vision of where we are. I'm saying that the first example of how he done it is comparable of this is a hard pill to swallow because I don't think it's a viable addict. And I think we didn't necessarily look at the other ones. Like, so where I would go with this is the golf course was looking for water when we needed to get water. We had to delay because we have some problems in our water. That probably cost the golf course here getting for 2 weeks, which is probably not a lot. Like, I guess there's other things that I'm looking at just from what can be done. Like, I think this is where it has to go. When we look at what it costs to do these projects, I think we didn't look at the best bang for our buck for the town, I guess is my comment. For just a small, like, I'm not saying the long term, I'm saying for a short term thing, or looking at 3 options of what it would be. I don't find land for $3.6 million, just seems like I'd never think to write that down. But that's, I guess I've got no more questions. I've kind of got my answers. Where we are is where we are.
Yeah, and I guess on the golf course, the only comment I would make is I think that like this year, just because we have irrigation over there doesn't mean they can take as much as we need or want. Whereas when we have, say we went with the land option that we have, we can still use the pivots and do it. It's not a choice. We would have to do it.
Just to counter with that, Mayor, though, but if the golf course had a carte blanche on an idea and they said, we're gonna put out a 50 meter or 500 meter by 100 meter area, and we're gonna line it, we're gonna do all this stuff, we'll tie it in, and this is what would go on their golf course budget. It'd be a different conversation. This is just theoretics of what could possibly happen. It sits on 240 acres of land.
It's true, but I think that pond would also get full because it wouldn't be irrigating because of the rain. Just like, and so I guess there's just pros and cons to each. Okay. Other questions? The only one I had was just kind of for future. So say we can't do a semi-continuous discharge into the creek, then we would land back maybe on another option, like to use the pivots. So wouldn't we need some land in the future? And wouldn't that land have to be near kind of our storm ponds and everywhere else that, not storm ponds, but near our ponds? So this land here will eventually be sold. So I'm just kind of thinking for future, what would we do? Would that only leave us now with the option to tie into Calgary, which is still like at between 80 and 100 million now, and also even with a treatment plant, we still can't discharge as much as what we want. It's treated, but
Right.
we can't discharge. So for future, like what does that leave us for options?
take this one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have,
To the chair, to the mayor. We kind of were discussing this idea, and I think it actually comes back from the question of like, how many pieces of spaghetti do you throw at the wall, right?
Yeah.
You know, and I think that there was the discussion of, you know, even if we get to the 2040 and Crossfield continues to grow and, you know, maybe Nose Creek, we're like, I don't know, think it can take any more. It gives you 10 to 15 years to say, like, in that period of time, where the new lagoon may be or where there's additional opportunity, you might be making the decision at that time to connect into Calgary to actually start expanding the irrigation component. So it's kind of more like around the discussion is do you take base of where the community is now? Do you take the low risk, cost effective option now, knowing that you want to keep in the back of your mind, coming back to some of the other questions too around irrigation. The other piece of it too, which 10 years from now, our ability to irrigate with it's treated, but it's lagoon treated irrigation water might change too. We might see more quality around how we deal with irrigation, but because we're discharging in relation to the creek, we're lowering that risk because we're kind of adding that engineering outcome piece. I would say continue to ask the questions. I think our outcome of this was how do we get the town of Crossville to a point where they can make a quick, let's say quick, not today, but a near future midterm decision that will buy that 10 to 15 years in a cost effective way, in a low risk way. So I think when you start to add questions like that, that just kind of adds to the opportunities of risks of the two options. So it shouldn't be taken off the table, but I think that that's a big part of it.
No, I don't get me wrong. I agree with the direction that we're going and the direction that you and administration are proposing.
Yeah.
I just always like to think a little bit further too and go, you know, I think Crossfield's growing at a pretty good rate and I don't think that's going to stop.
They might end up with both one day.
Yeah, you never know. But then maybe, you know, Calgary gets closer, Airdrie gets closer, maybe it'll be a little cheaper to get that line. I don't know.
Ready for a shorter pipe?
The outcome is yeah, and the outcome is to buy time to be able to do that. So we
Yeah,
agree.
for sure. Excellent. Okay, any other questions?
Through the chair, I just have maybe it's a comment. It's not a question at all. It's, do you think that we might be going down a path that where you know, we're committing ourselves to this one direction where that we might kind of force us because of cost, not connecting to Calgary because it will be just impossible to afford that, you know, 15 years down the road because of the cost is going to be just astronomical. And maybe are we forcing ourselves into a corner by going down this road? Whereas, hey, do we bite the bullet right now? And, you know, are the costs to go to Calgary right away less cost prohibitive than 15, 20 years from now? Or are we trying to plan for that eventual run at Calgary? So I don't know. You don't have to answer that because but you can throw your comments out there.
Okay, through the chair to Councillor Gustafson. Some of the stuff that your administration has talked about a lot is there's a lot of hair on regional systems, and the province of Alberta hasn't figured out how to do that well yet. Part of the discussion around, there's a number of partners associated with this, buying yourself the time to make the decision when it's right. And maybe that is in 5 or 6 years. Maybe this province decides that regional systems are going to throw tens of millions of dollars at it, and that would be the time to get on it. But Crossfield comes to the table from a point of, we don't need it, we can negotiate it. And I think that when we talked about this midterm option, it was always to get the town into a position where they were in a position to negotiate versus we need it. Sure, we'll do whatever you want. We'll sign whatever agreement you want, whatever servicing agreement or anything like that. He was on council in Chestermere during CUI and master servicing agreements with the city of Calgary. And we could have a long conversation around what it's like to be on the small end of a very large decider on what they're going to charge you for rates. So
Yes.
No, I agree. I think if we put ourselves in a position of more self-sufficiency than being at the whim of a big beast like that municipality. I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be in that position. So I think we are traveling in the right spot. I want to assure our ratepayers, our residents, our friends, our neighbors that we're making, I hope, the best decision, because this is a huge, this is the biggest one. And, you know, starting on council, you know, 50 years back now, is, you know, this was, I was always hoping that we'd get to this position where we can actually move forward without, you know, another study, so I'm glad we're at this point. Just want to move on and get it done.
And just to make the point, I think this council has always been in agreement that we, hooking up with Calgary would be our last option because we never wanted to be beholden.
If I may, through the chair, just to all of council, just to Councilor Gustafson's point and a little further to Jennifer's. Also, these regional system connections, they take a lot of time to negotiate, and you know, the design negotiation period may take 5 or 6 years alone, let alone construction, maybe 1 or 2, maybe 3 construction seasons to build a pipe of that length. So this is something that, you know, administration and council won't be able to drop off our radar necessarily, because if we're looking at a 2040 timeframe, we're looking at having these conversations all over again by the end of the 2020s here, you know, by 2029, 2020, 2030 to say, where do we want to go? I know we've done an interim solution, but already by 2030, we need to start talking about where do we want to go, or maybe even sooner, right? If we're going to have those big regional conversations. So I think we're in a position right now where I don't think the town's able to wait for another 8 years to make a move on something here. But you know, in 3 or 4 years, we'll be back, you know, with council saying, okay, we did this, but now we need to think to the future. So.
Good. All right. Any further discussion from council? Okay, who'd like to make motion? It's a long one.
Sure, through the chair.
I'm going to give this one to Councillor Fox.
I see where I rate.
Well, deputy mayor is only a name.
I propose a motion that council direct administration to initiate the next steps for implementing and polishing treatment wetland system, including conduct geotechnical assessment and groundwater monitoring in fall of 2025, using the remaining 2025 funds of the interim effluent disposal study. Submission of grant application to secure funding. Engaging with neighboring municipalities and the Nose Creek Watershed Partnership. Submission of a pilot discharge application to Alberta Environmental and Protect Areas, and inclusion of the environment assessments, design and construction of the polishing treatment wetland system in 2026 budget to be considered by council.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And motion carried. Anybody opposed? Thank you. All right. Just before you go, both of you, thank you for your hard work and all of the other staff that's been involved with this. I know it's been a long road and a lot of decisions have to be made and a lot of engagements and whatnot. So thank you for taking us this far, and I'm looking forward to the next pieces.
Mhm.
Okay, item 6.3, National Depression Screening Day Proclamation. Any discussion about the proclamation?
I think it's a worthwhile cause.
Okay, yeah, if there's no discussion, I'm gonna make the motion that the town of Crossfield proclaim October 9th, 2025 as National Depression Screen Day in Crossfield. All in favor?
Aye.
That's motion carried. Okay, item 6.4, special ballot. Manager Lindsay Nash.
Good evening, council. Thank you for letting me add this to the agenda last minute tonight. Administration is seeking council's approval to authorize the use of special ballots for the 2025 municipal election as permitted under the Local Authorities Election Act and the town's election bylaw. Special ballots provide an option for those electors who are unable to attend advance voting or vote at a voting station on election day, ensuring a fair and equal opportunity to vote. Applications will be accepted from nomination day until October 17th, and may be submitted in writing, in person, or by telephone, or by email. Completed ballots completed applications must be returned to the returning officer by 4 p.m. on election day to ensure that they're counted. The returning officer will ensure that all applications and ballots comply with the provisions within the Local Authorities Election Act. There will be some minor financial impacts may result primarily related to postage, depending upon the number of applications that we do receive. As of today's date, we have not received any. Administration is recommending that the town of Crossville provide for special ballots for the 2025 municipal election for those electors who are unable to vote at the advance vote or at the voting station on election day. And applications of special ballots will be received from nomination day until 4 p.m. on October 17th and must include the information as outlined within section 77.1, 2.4 of the Local Authorities Election Act, and that the applications for special ballots be made in one or more of the following ways: in writing at the town office, in person at the town office, or by contacting the town by phone or by emailing to the town's email address. And the completed special ballots must be received to the returning officer no later than 4 p.m. on election day in order to be counted. The returning officer shall ensure that the application for special ballots complies with section 77.1, 77.2, 77.21, and 77.3 of the Local Authorities Election Act. That is the end of my report, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
Through the chair.
Councillor Knight?
Lindsay, remind me if we've ever, would this be participating like with maybe the seniors 2 lodges, or we used to at one time, we used to go there and I helped them with the voting back committee, didn't we, or how'd that work? Or I know this isn't for this, but would this be a situation where that would be helpful there, or do we have a plan for the lodges?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Knight. We do, council did make a motion to have institutional voting. So on election day, we will have 2 election workers attend both the lodge and the manor for an hour each, and then come back here. So we do offer it for that.
Thank you.
That's great. Good news. Great. Any questions? Any more? Okay, who'd like to make a motion?
Through the chair.
Councillor Knight?
I move that the town of Crossfield provide for special ballots for the 2025 municipal elections for those electors who are unable to vote at the advance vote or the voting station on election day. Application of special ballots will be received from nomination day until 4 p.m. on October 17th, 2025, and must include the information outlined in section 77.1, 2.4 of the Local Authorities Elections Act, and that the application for special ballots be made in any one or more of the following methods: in writing delivered to the town office, in person at the town office during regular business hours, by telephone at 403-946-5565, or by email to the town at town@crossfieldalberta.com. And completed special ballots must be received by the returning officer no later than 4:30 on election day in order to be counted. And the returning officer shall ensure that the application for special ballots complies with sections 77.1, 77.2, 77.21, and 77.3 of the Local Authorities Election Act.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thanks.
Thank you.
Manager Nash. Okay, on to item 7, councilor's business. It's been a busy couple of weeks here for me, so I continue to meet with the CAO for our meetings. I attended the Chamber Golf Tournament this past Friday. It was fairly well attended. There was a lot of sponsors that were obtained, and it was just a really fun time. So that was great to see that the Chamber made a little bit money for themselves and for the Curling and Activity Club. I also attended the Crossfield Wellness Day. I think that day keeps getting bigger and better. And I know you were there, Doug. Thanks for attending that. I think that a lot of people get a lot of good things out of it. And, mental health is a real thing. And the Crossfield Wellness Club, Wellness Group does a really good job of promoting and sending resources for mental health. I went to the town hall with Daniel Smith last night. I just wanted to find out what their options were, what they were talking about, see if it would affect the town at all. And, they've been doing the roadshow with their 5 points there, and I'm sure you guys have seen some of that online. So it went really well, and I was happy that I attended and became informed. I also stopped by the arena on Saturday. I saw that the ice is all in, and I wanted to check it out. And, the kids are all happy. And minor hockey did say that, our staff notified them of the water break and the boil water advisory right away. And they were happy about that, so they could accommodate the kids with, some fresh potable water. So that was good. And I also stopped in and talked to Carmen at Bigway. I know it's always hard when you get broken into, and just want to talk to him about any ideas for safety for businesses and whatnot. And he's open to having a conversation with, RCMP and other town people on that and see if there's any solutions. And then I've had 3 mid-sized towns meetings. One was in Pinoca, and happy to say that our staff and some of the other CFO and CAOs from the executives did a really good job in compiling the information for the ask to the province for a single pot of funding for mid-sized towns. And the formula that they came up with, I thought was very fair. And the executive was really happy with their presentation. And thanks, Kinza, for doing such a great presentation. Kinza really took on the bulk of it. And I think it was a really good moment. Thank you. And then the last one we had with mid-sized towns last week was with the MLA from the Chestermere area, Chelsea. Just to chat about that one pot of money and what that looks like. And she's on board. She likes our formula. And she said that if we needed any help, that she'd be able to help us promote it within. So that is it for me, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah. I missed the Community Wellness Day, but I heard that was really good. I did end up going to Community Fest. That one was really
Oh, yeah, Community Fest. That was
Yeah.
good.
We're solving all the world's problems over there. Thought it was a really good turnout, and I was actually impressed because there was a few new things like the banners that were thrown across from light to light, and the weather held up this year. First one in 3 years, so that's good.
Yeah.
Beyond that, that's it for me.
And just on that note, that our administration did a really good job there too on setting up the tent and putting the information up. So if we needed to speak to any of those points, not only do we have full support of administration that was there, but we also had the points up on the boards, and I think those boards were an attraction for people to come in and have a look and be informed. Yeah,
Thank-
so that was good.
Thank you, Mayor Harris. That was good.
Yeah. Councillor Fox,
I have nothing further to report.
Councillor Gustafson.
Well, I missed that that evening by about, I don't know, you guys must have tore it down really quick because I wasn't much behind you. The street was back to its normal self.
Yeah.
So after a long day at work, but I had a coworker of mine, their mother just moved into Abrio Place, just down the street from my employment. So I was glad to go down there and help with the adjustment because it was a big adjustment for one person, and talk to actually some of our ex-residents of Crossfield that now live in Abrio and get them acquainted and do my part as being a board member of the Rocky View Foundation. Tomorrow we have our budget for the Rocky View Foundation, so we'll be joining that at 3 p.m. tomorrow at our headquarters in Airdrie. And that's all I've got to report.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Knight.
We held our monthly Mountain View Regional Water Commission meeting on September the 10th in Olds at the Pomeroy. in addition to the meeting, we also had a draft budgeting meeting and then also a response planning incident. I'm gonna be sharing with council and administration the emergency response plan, because it's quite an interesting and in-depth plan, and we actually spent a couple hours going down each scenario, and there's probably pretty good value in some of our staffing people seeing what the emergency response is and some things like that. I was quite impressed that it was something that was new that I sort of brought forward as the chairman this year, which was pretty good. I do know that we're looking for there'll be some interesting things coming forward out of the Water Commission, so that should be good. One thing that I would note though is interesting, the Water Commission can't apply for grants. So even if we want to do expansion and all the rest, that's up to the commission, there isn't, so that's something me as the chairman's engaging with some government people to see what we can do with communities and other ways of advocating for some grant money for our Water Commission.
The towns can collectively apply
So
for any of those grants.
So that's all my updates.
Excellent, thank you. And on that note, say for Deputy Mayor Brennan, for Councillor Gustafson and Councillor Knight, if you know of any costs that are going to go up with the, the Marigold and with the foundation and with the Water Commission, if you could let administration know as soon as possible so they can account for it in the budget, which is just around the corner.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Lambert,
Nothing to report.
Councillor Vang.
I have nothing to report.
All right. Can I get a motion?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
No, I'm looking for a different motion. Who'd like to make the
Good
motion?
chair.
Yeah, Councillor Knight.
I'll make the motion that councilor's business be accepted as presented.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And then administrative update, we're looking to CEO Barney on the outstanding items list.
Thank you, Mayor Harris. So the outstanding items list does have 6 items still sitting on it. The bike skills park and pump track, the RFP has closed. Like I had alluded to earlier, the proposals are being reviewed, and I understand we're going through the reference checks right now before we move forward with awarding, but we anticipate that will be happening right away. Limit Avenue speed change, that one we have followed up with the province this week, but have not yet received an updated response back from them pertaining to that item. The offer to purchase and town-owned land discussion on future use will be taking place in December. That's scheduled for, I believe it is December 16th meeting. Snow removal and ice control program will be part of the October 7th council meeting. And the town office development is an item that continues to be explored and we continue to work on.
Great. Questions for CEO Barney?
Through the chair.
Councillor Knight.
Should we move the Q4 date then for the item 004 to Q4? Just the town owned land one, if it's coming back in December. It just says due date Q3.
You're
Yeah, it's supposed
correct.
to come back in Q3.
Councillor Gustafson, both 034 and 004 should probably be shifted to Q3 of 2025.
And will we see that in October?
Those are in December.
That's Q4 then, or is it through Q3 because our numbers are all. Okay, sorry. They get messed up in our Qs. Not in the seasons of weather.
Yeah.
Those are in December.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. No questions other than that? Who has a motion?
Through the chair.
Councillor Lambert.
I'll make the motion that the outstanding items list be accepted as presented.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
That's motion carried. Correspondence, Marigold Library Board update. Any questions on that? Councillor Brennan can answer all of them, or Deputy Mayor, he can answer all of them, so.
Bring it on.
There's no questions, who'd like to make a motion?
Make the motion to adjourn.
No.
Keep trying.
Nice try, though.
Long day.
Geez, you were just on holidays. Are you still on holidays?
He's still on.
I'm on BC time.
Holy cow. Okay, Councillor
So-
Fox.
Make the motion that the items under correspondence be filed for your information.
Okay, all in favor? Motion carried. Now, Councillor Vang, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, we adjourn.
Thank you.